Good morning. I'm Jeffrey Duerk, Provost and Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs at the University of Miami. It's an honor to welcome all of you to this inaugural event hosted by the School of Architecture, the Graduate School, the University of Miami Institute for Advanced Study of the Americas, the Center for Urban and Community Design, the Interdisciplinary MPS in Urban Sustainability and Resilience, and the MS in Sustainable Business. This particular event will focus mainly on South Florida and the Caribbean region, experiences, research, and innovations. The multidisciplinary and interdisciplinarity of this symposium mirrors University of Miami's diverse research endeavors. As a complement to other University of Miami biannual symposia focused on the marine and atmospheric sciences, this program will showcase existing local and regional pursuits, as well as University of Miami's strengths across various academic programs, which focus on adaptation solutions for social, physical, and economic related climate issues. We continue to grow our commitment to partnerships with regional and local academic organizations, with our local and state and federal government, with nonprofits and community groups to address these very important issues. Thank you for making this happen today. It's through this dialogue that we'll continue to expand our efforts. Now I'd like to introduce the esteemed Dean of the School of Architecture, Dean Rudolph el-Khoury.
Thank you, Provost Duerk, for your welcome remarks. I too wish to welcome all of our participants and contributors to the Subtropical and Tropical Coastal Resilience Symposium. Of course, it's an honor to be able to share the work of our own University of Miami community. But in addition, we want to warmly greet our colleagues from other institutions from the state, across the country, and especially those throughout the Caribbean region. Our region is connected through our shared experiences with the realities of climate change. And we are grateful to be able to explore these questions with you all, learning from your perspectives and the insights you have gained. This symposium highlights the human-centered dimension of climate change and climate resilience across disciplines and fields. Our many speakers and presenters offers new comprehension into not only how climate change is driving transformation in the lives of individuals, communities, and society at large, but also how these same actors are contributing to finding new innovative pathways towards resilience. I wish to take a moment to thank our sponsors, Perkins & Will, the Urban Land Institute in South Florida and the Caribbean, AIA Miami, the Florida Climate Institute, and Florida Coastal Risk. Thank you for your generous support that has helped to bring this event together. The Coastal Resilience Symposium illustrates the commitment of our institution to partnering with those in industry, with leading experts, government agencies, and with the many stakeholders who are all seeking to advance our efforts towards greater resilience. I also want to acknowledge the event co-hosts. We come together from different academic units, and this highlights our commitment to interdisciplinarity, cross-knowledge, cross-cultural cooperation. The hosts are the Graduate School, the Institute for the Advanced Study of the Americas, the Center for Urban and Community Design, the Master of Science in Sustainable Business program, our new Master of Professional Science in Urban Sustainability and Resilience program, and the School of Architecture. My admired partners in each of these academic units have contributed greatly to our being here today. I thank them for their insightfulness, leadership, and their passion to deliver the highest quality event possible. And while much of this credit is due to the amazing teamwork building across multiple units and disciplines, I would like to acknowledge one unstoppable driving force moving and guiding this project forward in the person of Professor Sonia Chow. Professor Chow is the director of the Center of Urban and Community Design at the School of Architecture and co-director of the Master of Professional Science in Urban Sustainability and Resilience, a program mounted jointly with the Department of Geography to prepare for climate change impacts with a new model of interdisciplinary education. Professor Chow, whose work has long probed the intersection of climate change, resilient design, and historic preservation, is shaping the school's architecture initiatives in coastal resilience. You will soon meet her when she closes the morning session. Thank you, Sonia, for such great work on this. Now, the symposium is the first in a series of planned biannual events in which we intend to focus on the question of resilience in different geographic regions. This year's event will be followed by the publication, which will feature the research produced by some of the speakers who are presenting today. We hope you will join us in this symposium as it continues to grow and evolve year after year. More on that later today. The program will begin with a plenary keynote address by Jim Murley, the Chief Resilience Officer of Miami-Dade County, whom I will introduce in a moment. Following Mr. Murley's address will be our morning presentations. You shall have 5 concurrent sessions to choose from, each featuring 3 to 5 speakers, followed by a Q&A session. Now, the links to join each of these rooms are on our schedule on the symposium website, but also you will see the link to the schedule in the chat box at the end of each of your sessions. Remember, also, you will need the same passport you used to enter this space to join the session. After the morning presentations, we will have 5 midday presentations to choose from again. You will find the link to each topics on our website. At 12:40 p.m., you are all invited to join our lunchtime keynote chat with Dr. Paul Farmer, co-founder of Partners in Health. Dr. Farmer will be in conversation with Dr. Felicia Knoll, director of the University of Miami's Institute for Advanced Study of the Americas. This keynote chat concludes at 1:30 p.m. At 1:35, we begin our next set of concurrent presentations, again, the links for which are online. At 3:15 p.m., we come back together in plenary for remarks from Professor Chow introducing the dialogue sessions. Now, the dialogue sessions shall each address specific questions pertinent to social, economic, and physical adaptation needs across our regions, and features very distinguished guest panelists. I myself will be conducting one of those sessions on the built environment. Following these conversations, my colleague, Dean Willie Prado, shall begin our final plenary at 4:30 p.m. And then we are honored to have President Frank join us for closing remarks at the end of our event and our time together today. I remind you that the symposium provides up to 30 health, safety, and welfare continuing education units for Florida architects and 5 AICP certification maintenance credits for planners. You can still register for these options if you haven't yet by following the instructions on our website. And I also recommend that you get some help from our live assistant chat box on the website. Now, we know that there are multiple concurrent sessions and you can't be all everywhere at the same time. So I'm pleased to announce that actually all the sessions will be available as recorded files on our website. But please wait up to 2 weeks for us to prepare those documents for you. All registered participants will receive an email with instructions on how to access this archive. Now, thank you again for joining us today, and we look forward to a full day together. Now, we encourage you to interact with our speakers with your questions and insights as the day unfolds. Now, without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce to you our fearless advocate for sustainability and resilience initiatives, a man who for decades has been leading our South Florida region alongside his many able partners, promoting policies and facilitating real action towards those noble and needed goals, Mr. James F. Murley. Jim Murley is the Chief Resilience Officer for Miami-Dade County. He previously served as Secretary of the Department of Community Affairs under Governor Lawton Chiles and was appointed Chair of the Florida Energy and Climate Commission by Governor Charlie Crist. Additionally, he served as Executive Director of 1000 Friends of Florida, spent 10 years with Florida Atlantic University overseeing research on urban and environmental issues, and served as Executive Director of the South Florida Regional Planning Council. Jim is a founding member of the American Society for Adaptation Professionals and Resiliency Florida, a board member of the Florida Ocean Alliance and the Southeast Coastal Ocean Observing Regional Association. He is also a fellow of the National Academy of Public Administration. Thank you for joining us, Jim. The stage is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Dean and Provost Duerk, and special thanks to Sonia for all she does. I think you said it very well, Dean, in terms of her commitment to this and this event. I'm going to go provide some PowerPoint slides and hopefully introduce resilience in a broad way. I really believe that Greater Miami beaches is really the center of a worldwide resilience effort. So let's proceed if we can get the slides. If we go to the next slide, please. And the next slide, please. Thank you. So again, this is an international effort to focus on resilience. It was pioneered by the Rockefeller Foundation through their 100 Resilient Cities program, but today lives on where those cities themselves have created a successor organization, the Global Resilient Cities Network, which Miami-Dade County, partnering with all of our cities, but specifically the city of Miami, Miami Beach, we are very active in this international organization. Next slide, please. Also, we are very fortunate to partner with a new resilience center, which is housed in the Atlantic Council in Washington, D.C. Should be a familiar name, two familiar names, the Adrian Arts Rockefeller Foundation and the Resilience Center. They have a broad scale program in resilience all over the world. They pioneered with us a repurposed shipping container as a resilience pod. And they will be focusing on extreme heat in the future. You will hear more about this because we'll be working with them in Miami-Dade County. Next slide, please. One of the other things that we work with in interstate or Southeast United States is focus on disaster and resilience partnership. It includes so many of the entities that would be attending this seminar, I'm sure, given the tropical and subtropical focus. But this is a great source of information on both resilience and disaster preparedness. And it's, again, reflective of the resilience message that's pervading so much of what goes on in these issue areas. Next slide, please. In Florida, we have a statewide group, which Miami-Dade County helped form, helping It's called Resiliency Florida. We focus on policies that are taking place and being debated as we speak here this morning at the Florida legislature, and now again in Washington, D.C. So these coalitions at the international, regional, by state and state level are very important to leveraging the role that Miami-Dade County and our cities play in the resiliency ecosystem. Next slide, please. A core organization for our work, especially in climate, is the Southeast Regional Climate Change Compact. The counties which you see symbolized there, we've been in existence for a decade, and we hope to return to our in-person summit in early December of this year in West Palm Beach. This organization provides core backup material that all 4 counties and over 100 cities can use as they prepare for climate change in the future. Next slide, please. This is probably one of the most important products. This is the current projection of sea level rise in Southeast Florida. While we rely on modeling from the International Panel on Climate Change and the National Climate Assessment, the actual report, which is done every 5 years, relies on scientists from the University of Miami, Florida International University, our federal partners and local partners, to fine tune those large scale projections to our region. And these are pretty much the projections used by all public and private entities for sea level rise. Next slide, please. The Regional Climate Compact is not limited just to working on sea level rise issues alone. We very much want to focus on social equity questions, which are so important at the regional, county, and city level. And so I refer you to their website and to the Regional Climate Action Plan, which looks at a whole range of things, including social equity, for your further edification. Next slide, please. We're real proud of this. This is the formal mechanism whereby the Resilient Cities Partnership, Miami Beach, Miami and Miami-Dade County, have an agreement with our 2 research universities and our Miami-Dade College. And there's been so many beneficial dividends from this. We created the agreement early on as we were formulating the resilience strategy. And we brag about this nationally and internationally as a foundation for our resilience work. Next slide, please. Just one example of where the byproduct of that Metro Lab network is operating under the leadership of Dr. Tiffany Troxler and Dr. Amy Clement from UM, and a host of professors who have volunteered from the participating universities. We're focusing on an area in Northeast Miami-Dade County, and we're doing also, there's several studies going on in the same area we refer to as the Little River Basin. But this particular study is helping us understand how to measure if we're actually making a difference over time with our resilience efforts. And this bodes really well as a national model for the work that's going on in our universities and with their partners. Next slide, please. Well, again, we're so pleased to see that the University of Miami, in so many ways, including the seminar, but also academically, putting together courses that will train future leaders. I hope somebody to take my place in the future, Dean, that'll do the work that needs to be done. This work is not done in just a decade. It will be ongoing as we adapt to issues of climate change and other resilience questions. So congratulations to University of Miami on this exciting academic opportunity. Next slide, please. So we're going to dig in now to the actual document that guides our overall work. As I said, we were supported in developing this plan by the Rockefeller Foundation under their 100 Resilient Cities program. We now have a plan that I'll talk about and give you a scope that resilience in Miami-Dade County and generally around the world is not just climate change. It's a lot of other important issues that any community has to deal with short-term and long-term. Next slide, please. So in the process of thinking about what would be the major focus areas of our resilience strategy, we cataloged, if you will, the top shocks and stresses that we knew were going to be, have been, or could be in the future, things we wanted to anticipate and prepare for. And again, these are not just climate issues. This is about dealing with transportation mobility, dealing with housing and infrastructure. In this process of developing the plan, we had the Zika outbreak, if some of the participants may remember. And because of that, and the successful programs that happened in government and research in universities, we put in our plan, which came out in April of 2019, that we need to prepare for future pandemics. We did not have a crystal ball, but boy, we really anticipated something that we all know now has a major short-term impact and long-term stress on our community. Next slide, please. As we did the sorting of what would be the shocks and stresses that we wanted to address and what would be the action items that were going to be important to put in a plan for the entire county, we really had sort of three foundational benchmarks. We wanted to be sure to include social equity, that everybody was involved in the thinking about the plan and, most important, impacted by its implementation. We needed to have innovation and technology as a foundation for how we approach these problems in the future. And in a county with 34 cities, many special districts, civic organizations, neighborhoods, foundational institutions, we needed to have intergovernmental collaboration as a foundation. Next slide, please. So cities were well represented at the launch of our plan, our resilience strategy in the spring of 19. And you'll see our Commissioner Libyan Cava there on the left in red. She is now our mayor, Libyan Cava. And so we were proud to have her involved all the way through this process. As we speak today, many of our 34 cities actively are engaged in, as they have decided on from their perspective, what are the important parts of the strategy for them to address. Next slide, please. We have issued an annual report, which you can find at resilient305.com, resilient305.com. And you'll see that one of the things that the partnership and the strategy has done is been able to help bring external funding to our community to pursue many of the action items. We think that's an important factor, and it reflects to the outside world that there is a collaborative effort going on in Miami-Dade County among all the partners, and their investment will have positive returns. And that's what we hope to demonstrate by measuring our success and attracting more funds. Next slide, please. I just want to mention here that we're in the middle of a very important related effort to Resilient 305, and that is Thrive 305. Our new mayor wants to engage our community in the future objectives and programs that she believes should be supported. And we have had a tremendous survey conducted of over 25,000 participants. And I want to especially note that this Saturday at the Adrian Arts Center, in a socially distant fashion with masks, we will be having a live Saturday event, which I believe actually will end at around noon, but also has some optional things in the afternoon. And you can learn much more about this at thrive305.org. Please participate. Please follow this very important effort. It is definitely connected to our resilience strategy. Next slide, please. So the document itself is divided into three main sections. referring to places, people, and pathways. And then we have a series of objectives and then the key action items. Next slide. So places, of course, defines Miami, where we are in the subtropics, our environment, our geology, our relationship to water, and our very diverse population. So places is where much of the action items relate to climate change. Next slide, please. Action item number 1 was Biscayne Bay, our premier ecological water body that is almost like our central park to our entire region. And luckily, right away, our county, through Commissioner Sosa, the commission, and the mayors have initiated action to address the short and long-term quality of Biscayne Bay. And of course, this involves our universities, important research done at Rosenstiel School, at UM, but the study has been released. We now have a chief bay officer, and we're actively putting in place the recommendations. Next slide, please. One of our action items is a primary feature of a coastal community, our beaches. They have to be maintained and they are managed as a resource with multiple benefits. But their primary reason that there are investments made in this structure is to protect us from storm surge. One of the threats from climate change, and by virtue of the rising seas, it makes the storm surge even more of a threat. So you will often see that we have activities going on, the county working with our cities on the beach, with the state of Florida, and the U.S. Corps of Engineers. But the beaches are part of our ecosystem, and they are managed in appropriate ways. Next slide, please. Sea level rise, probably the existential issue facing us. It's that relationship of the sea to the land, but in our instance, because of our geology, it's also that important factor of how sea level rise is affecting groundwater. And so a small change in elevation can be very important to where you live and how you will adapt in the future to sea level rise. And we have issued a sea level rise strategy. Next slide, please. Which is a core document called for in the Resilience 305 strategy. And we believe is one of few anywhere that addresses sea level rise specifically. It does address short-term impacts and shocks such as tidal flooding and storm surge. But the root cause of our future long-term challenges is sea level rise and how it affects our life. So how do we adapt to that? How do we plan for it? And how do we make changes? That's what the sea level rise strategy addresses and is now available online at our website. Next slide, please. Let me give special tribute to Elizabeth Zyrk, a former dean and professor now, a professional architect here in our community. The transect that she has pioneered with her husband, Andres Duani, and many other professionals at the university and outside, we modified with their help to be a key element in our sea level rise strategy. We are such a big county, there's no one issue, there's no one solution, and you have to take a look at the transect to understand where you are and what set of solutions you can extract from the strategy to use in the future. Next slide, please. Miami's history is tied to our relationship to living with water. And when people first came here, it was pretty evident that water was the dominant feature. But change is also a dominant element of living in Southeast Florida. Next slide, please. So that past picture, go ahead, please, is today's Miami. And that change element is key to us thinking about the future of living with sea level rise, because we will change. That picture will not look the same in 100 years. How we adapt is the key, and how we use all of our capabilities to think about, plan, and implement will be the story of adaptation to climate change in Miami. Next slide, please. In the sea level rise strategy, we basically have 5 main approaches that we suggest be looked at a high level as you start to drill down and think about strategies to adapt to sea level rise. Many of them build on things that define our environment, our landscape today. The fact that we're interlaced with canals and other water bodies that draw the water off the land and move it towards the bay. But with sea level rise, as we already know, during sunny day flooding, sometimes the water goes the other direction, and we find ourselves with flooding on our streets. So we have to start thinking about our blueways and our green neighborhoods in a different way as we move ahead. We also have to understand that there are multiple benefits to this right kind of development around our expanding transit system. Those are on relatively high ground today, and the development to stations will be key to one way we adapt. Next slide, please. Here's a look at those 5 major approaches. Next slide, please. Adaptation action areas is a way we take the whole package in the sea level rise strategy and put it on the ground and test it in a geographic area. We use a program called Adaptation Action Areas. One is underway today in the Little River area. Next slide. You can see the focus here. You can see the, we're very thinking about buildings, how they relate to the water, to flooding that could happen in the future, the flooding that happens today, where our septic tanks. We have to look at a comprehensive set of factors as you prepare an action plan for sub areas of the county. Next slide, please. We're also thinking about one of the premier threats, and that is a large impact in the future from storm surge. Think of Hurricane Dorian just plummeting the northern Bahamas just a few years ago. Next slide, please. So we are partnering with the Corps of Engineers on a Back Bay study, and it is still in process. So it'll finish up this calendar year. But I want to emphasize to everyone that's listening that has heard about this plan, it's not going to be set in stone, even when it's hopefully authorized by Congress. There will be much more planning, citizen involvement, drawing on our science professionals and others to think through the actual implementation of this plan, if it is successfully authorized and funded by United States Congress. That's important to our community because elements of protecting ourselves from storm surge that are authorized by Congress are eligible for 65% federal funding. Next slide, please. Many other studies are going on here, our beach, our port, a regional study on coastal systems. Corps of Engineers is a primary partner with us in working on these issues. Next slide. We are in the process of updating our climate action strategy, if you will, our mitigation strategy. We need to make some pretty audacious moves if we're going to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions from our previous levels and move towards some form of zero emissions in the immediate future. The region is looking at this. The national level is in debate. We will have a draft plan hopefully released on Earth Day, and then we'll take it out and get comments from the community, hopefully in person, if not through Zoom calls, so that we can refine it and take it back to the mayor and then to the commission in the fall of this year. Next slide, please. A lot of the plan will rely on much as you know, we need to make a transition from carbon fueled gas emissions to electric vehicles. and electric vehicles plugged into a grid that increasingly is powered by renewable energy. Next slide, please. Our overall energy provider, Florida Power and Light, is actively expanding its base of power, especially in solar. We have a solar field in southwest Miami-Dade County, which represents part of that expansion. As a county, we're looking for every other opportunity to include solar on county properties and to encourage its use in our community. Next slide. A great way to reduce greenhouse gases is efficiency and conservation in our buildings. So our Building Efficiency 305 program focuses on how buildings are managed, how we can benchmark them, and be sure that that operational facet of using existing buildings to reduce the demand on energy, which will then result in less need for power from generation by carbon sources. Next slide, please. We are in this efficiency program, which also includes water. We're going to have a focus on some primary buildings that are over 20,000 square feet. It's a voluntary program to bring these public institutional buildings, private and public, into a program that allows them to understand how efficiency efforts will not only save them money, but will provide, we think, a competitive advantage for their building compared to their other buildings competing for the same, if you will, lessees. Next slide. People are a key part of our portion of our plan. You'll know how important that is from the attention you'll hear from our mayor whenever she talks about this issue. We have a new Renew 305 economic development strategy underway. And because of the pandemic, and everything that has changed, we understand the need to reflect on that and to attract the kinds of jobs that will help us weather that any future dislocation caused by such an event as a pandemic. Next slide, please. So as I said, we were very focused on this in the plan because of the experience we had dealing with the stress coming from tropical based diseases. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Pathways is our way of finding new and more efficient ways to do the work, working with our community at large. Next slide, please. We talk about how we prepare for disasters today, putting in place things which will mitigate future damage and, of course, protect people. Next slide, please. We're going to be doing a lot to improve and invest in taking advantage of new funding sources, working with our 35 cities, our Resilient 35 in the 305 as we move forward. Next slide, please. I just want to be sure to repeat this one more time, how important our coalition and participation with our cities is. Next slide. Just in closing then, let's continue to encourage coordination across sectors and partners. Let's plan in order to reduce future damages. Let's ensure that resilience is part of our critical infrastructure, and let's have clear communication with all parties, and let's involve everybody regardless of their status in our community. Thank you, and that completes my presentation.